In this video, we are talking all about the proxy fight. Pelt, Rizzulo, Iger, George Lucas. All kinds of stuff is happening right now in this proxy fight. A crazy situation that's heating up, all leading up to that big annual shareholder meeting. We're going to talk about it. We got Mr. Seymour Duck. We got the Italiano up next on OG 55. Welcome aboard, everybody, to another episode of OG 55, where we're talking all about the proxy battle at the Walt Disney Company. Crazy times we live in. But before we dive into our festivities, I want to introduce my fantastic panel. We got George, the Italiano. Welcome back, sir.
Thanks for having me back. And this is going to be a very interesting topic, to say the least, because it's just getting crazier and crazier. And I think we're all ready for April 3rd to come and kind of like finalize of like really the direction of like what the company's going to be moving forward and just kind of end all this chaos. But in the meantime, it's going to be an interesting topic, to say the least.
Absolutely. If you let everybody home know where they can find you on social media.
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you'll find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
There it is. There it is. And down below, we got the one and only Mr. Seymour Duck. Mr. Duck, welcome back, sir.
Hello. Glad to be here. And I'm always excited to be on your channel when we're talking about business and let me nerd out about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We love talking business with you and diving into this stuff with you, Seymour. You're a wealth of knowledge. We appreciate you. If you can let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, you can find me on X at Mr. Seymour Duck.
There it is. All right, let's dive into the festivities. We're talking all about Nelson Peltz. Oh man, my bad. I'm sorry. Wrong. See, this is what happens, right? When you're a content creator, you pull up the wrong image. That's not Nelson Peltz. Yeah. Nah, hold on one sec. Give me a
pretty
second.
Close, but
yeah. See, it happens, bro. It happens. What can you do? Honest mistake, though. Honest mistake. So Nelson Peltz. This is crazy. There's a lot going on right now with this whole thing, right? Now, to kind of sum it up before I kind of pull up these articles, we're going to kind of deep dive into all this stuff. It was looking for a little while there that it was kind of Peltz's campaign was kind of circling the drain, so to speak. And for the most part, I think that was an accurate description. Something did occur, though. He did get an endorsement recently from ISS that did sort of pump a little bit of life into his campaign. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk a lot about these other endorsements that Disney and Bob Iger have been getting, which is actually pretty crazy. So let's dive into we'll dive into the first one. We're going to kind of go through this and talk about it. Give me just a second, fellas. It's wild. It's absolutely wild. So this one was kind of a shock to everybody, to be honest. Hollywood Reporter. George Lucas, backs Disney and Bob Iger in the proxy fight. Creating magic is not for amateurs. The filmmaker of Star Wars and Disney shareholder released a statement in support of the company and its CEO on Tuesday morning. Now, real quick, I'm going to read the statement and we're going to talk about it and what it might mean. Quote, creating magic is not for amateurs. When I sold Lucasfilm just over a decade ago, I was delighted to become a Disney shareholder because of my longtime admiration for its iconic brand and Bob Iger's leadership, end quote. Lucas said in a statement Tuesday, quote, when Bob recently returned to the company during a difficult time, I was relieved. No one knows Disney better. I remain a significant shareholder because I have full faith and confidence in the power of Disney and Bob's track record of driving long-term value. I have voted all my shares for Disney's 12 directors and urge other shareholders to do the same. Seymour, I will start with you. What are your thoughts in regards to George Lucas publicly endorsing Bob Iger and the current Disney board?
This is amazing news. He's actually one of the biggest. Actually, I think he is the biggest individual Disney investor owning with the Disney shares, and I believe it hasn't been updated yet, so it could have changed. He could have sold, but he has more shares than even Tran Fund Management that Nelson Peltz, is the CEO of, and that's even though Ike Perlmutter gave him the shares, he has even more shares than that, and that is a huge influence among all the Disney investors. And I like to get that backing from him that is good. On Bob Iger's end.
Absolutely, it's very good. No matter how you want to slice it, it's really good news for Bob Iger, for sure. And it was interesting too in the statement that he said that he remains a significant shareholder, which you just touched upon, Seymour, because there's a lot of narratives out there that circle around George Lucas. Well, he's really not happy with how Disney has handled Star Wars. The rumor mill and the gossip stuff around Star Wars is out of control on like YouTube and Twitter and all that stuff. It is interesting that he has maintained a significant amount of shares in this company that supposedly all these people on YouTube say is destroying his baby. I find that kind of odd that he would remain such a massive shareholder if he really did believe that Disney was destroying his creation. Now, look, I'm not saying that George Lucas agrees with everything Bob Iger does. I'm not saying he agrees with everything that Lucasfilm has done. Obviously not. George Lucas has very strong opinions about this stuff. He even went toe to toe with fans over a lot of his work. But clearly he seems like he's pretty satisfied with the overall direction of everything, because like he said, he wouldn't have maintained all those shares over the past decade if he wasn't. So that's very interesting. George, what are your thoughts on George Lucas publicly, not just voting this way, but publicly supporting Iger and the board?
Yeah, when I heard the news, I thought, okay, this is a huge. I don't even want to say a game changer, because Disney already had kind of like the upper hand at this point, but it kind of solidified that, moving forward, by having a big name such as George Lucas kind of back the company up, back Iger up, back the board up. I mean, it was very telling. And I find it very interesting, but yet kind of irritating to the fact of where a lot of people are having like these conspiracy theories and everything. It's like, it's George Lucas. He was the creator of Star Wars. I mean, he's a retired billionaire. It's like there's nothing more that you could possibly do for him that could remotely change his mind. It's like, why is it that if it's something that you don't agree upon, why can't it just be, hey, you know what? Someone disagrees with your statement, your views. They want to back this company up. Point blank. End of story. It's why the extra BS?
It's nonsense, bro. Like, and that's the thing. I see people analyzing this statement. Well, he didn't write this. You know what? He probably didn't. A lot of people in his position, a lot of powerful people like George Lucas, people even like Bob Iger, they usually don't write their own statements.
That's true.
Oh my God.
They
right?
like have a publisher that does it for them.
Yeah.
They proofread and everything, and then they submit it online. Yeah. That's normal.
It's completely normal. So these people are like nitpicking. Well, he wouldn't say magic like that, or he wouldn't say this, that, and the other. It's like, you guys, he probably had, like you said, Seymour, his publicist or whatever, that probably wrote this. But obviously they didn't do it without his consent. He like they didn't just put it out there, and then George Lucas is like, no, I don't want, like he obviously feels his way if it was released, and he allowed it out to be out there, And
also, sorry.
No, go ahead, Seymour. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, and also it could just mean that he has more faith in Bob Iger than Nelson Peltz. It doesn't mean that he likes both of them. You can like one person better between the two, even if you hate both of them.
Right. And that's the other thing that I see a lot of, like, if you don't support Nelson Peltz and Rizzullo getting on the board, suddenly that means you automatically, like, you auto-endorse everything Iger has ever done. Life does not work like that. That's a very childish mentality that a lot of fans have. There are things Bob Iger has done and continues to do that I don't agree with. If I was Bob Iger, Hell, if I was Bob Chapek, I would have fired Kathleen Kennedy. She'd be gone a long time ago. I don't agree with how they've handled her. I would have put someone else in there. I've said many times, I would have had Jon Favreau have that position. I don't think he handled the succession plan the first time around with Chapek very well. When the pandy was about to hit, he threw the keys to the kingdom to Chapek and said, "Hey, you do it." I didn't like that. I was very critical in many videos of how he handled that. Iger is not perfect. I am not supporting everything Bob Iger does. Just because I don't think Peltz is a good fit for Disney doesn't mean that I support everything Iger does. And that goes for everybody supporting Bob Iger and the board, including probably George Lucas, including Steve Jobs' widow, including even Jamie Dimon from Chase. You don't have to love everything Iger does to say, hey, look, maybe Peltz and Rizzullo aren't the right guys. Look, I was a Bernie bro back in the day. I'm not going to hide it. I liked Bernie Sanders, and he didn't get the Democratic nomination, and it was Hillary Clinton. A lot of progressives voted for Hillary Clinton. They plugged their nose and they voted for Hillary Clinton because guess what? That's the only option that you had. So you had to compromise and deal with what like the next best thing is or whatever, or the lesser of two evils, so to speak. It's the same thing here. You can even dislike Bob Iger, but if you think Pelt is worse, then you're going to support Bob by default. So it's crazy. What do you what's your thoughts on that, George?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up in that manner. It's just like politics. It's just like you have two people that are running, campaigning, to become an elected official, or what have you. And it's like, you got to weigh in the pros and the cons, the do's and the don'ts. It's like, you're not going to like everything either one is doing, but it's like, yeah, as you said, lesser of the two evils, which one do you think would better be fit, to run in a certain position? And that's just, in this case, that's the same way. I agree with you. There's a lot of things that I disagree with Bob Iger. There's decisions he has made, things that he's continued to make that I disagree upon. But again, it's just because I do that doesn't mean I'm in favor of Peltz, and vice versa. I don't think Peltz is the right fit. I never thought Rizzullo was the fit. Even when Rizzullo was part of the company, I didn't think that he was a right fit. So to have him back in now is just completely asinine. It's like, I don't get it.
Well, and then you get this narrative that like, well, it's just 2 seats on the board. Okay, if it's just 2 seats on the board and it's not consequential at all, then why are you guys all stressing over it? Obviously it matters because the other side's worried about it too. But then they want to say, well, it's just 2 seats. No, well, it's a big deal. A seat on this company is a big deal. I know there's 12 people on it, but it matters. You know what I'm saying? And this other notion of like, well, George Lucas, this is out of character for him to chime in on controversial topics. Are you serious? I mean, have you heard George Lucas in the past? I mean, this guy has railed against his own fans on camera, talking about how, they're basically man babies or this, that, and the other. They don't understand that these movies are for kids and they don't get it. And, this is a guy who admitted also that the original trilogy was what would you call it? Like an allegory, I guess you would call it, of the U.S. In Vietnam during the Vietnam War, and how the U.S. was basically the empire, the evil empire. Okay, yeah, this is the guy who's afraid to say his opinion. Okay, he could say that America's the evil empire, right? That was the allegory for the original trilogy. But the proxy ballot is a bridge too far. That just makes him blush. He's just too shy to talk about
I think honestly, this was more mild of him.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like this guy. This is the same guy too. Even more recently with the sequel, with the prequels in Revenge of the Sith, they have that line about "you're either with us or against us," which was almost a direct lift from George W. Bush. And I believe I think even George Lucas admitted he borrowed from that speech. It's like, this guy is not shy. Where did this come from? Where people think he's afraid to make a controversial statement?
Again, it's the mentality, because he is then making a statement opposed to them disagreeing with him. It's like if you're not, again, basically, if you're not with them, you're against them. Pun intended.
Full circle, and that's what bothers me, right? So we're going to get into this story about ISS, a big advisory firm supporting Peltz. I didn't get out there on Twitter or make a video saying, "Oh man, there's got to be some like secret agenda here, man. There's got to be money moving around. Like, why would they support Pelts?" No, I do. You know what? They recommend voting for Pelts because of the succession issues. Fine, you take the L and you just deal with it. I don't understand why people have to make all these excuses, all these conspiracy theories every time someone comes out and supports Bob Iger. Maybe they just like Bob Iger more than Pelts. Is that a possibility? Maybe their opinion's different than yours. Is that a possibility? Crazy stuff. Before we move on to our next one, though, Seymour, any kind of final thoughts on the Lucas thing?
No, you pretty much nailed everything. It's just that, you're everyone on the X making these conspiracy theories and all this. I mean, like at the end of the day, he can say what he wants and he can support what he wants.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, 100%. All right, let's move on to the next one. This is actually from, I think it was today, actually. Bob Iger and Disney get backing in proxy battle from former CEO Michael Eisner. So this is interesting. Michael Eisner, he is no stranger to these kind of fights. This poor guy. Now, I do like Michael Eisner. I think his first 10 years was much better than his last 10 years, absolutely. But he went through a situation, so to speak, where Roy Disney, the nephew of Roy Disney, the brother, I'm sorry, not the nephew of Roy. The son of Roy Disney, Roy O. Disney. He went through all that in 2004, 2005 with the whole Save Disney campaign and what have you. He came out in support of Bob Iger. Okay, now I don't know, and Seymour, you might have the answer to this. This is largely. At first, I was like, okay, this is cool. This is largely a symbolic gesture. But then the more I thought about it, I'm like, well, wait a minute. Maybe not so symbolic because this guy was a former CEO at the Walt Disney Company. This guy probably has a ton of shares, right? Or do we know how many shares that Eisner has, or ballpark even?
A lot of the times we don't know. If they have less than 5%, they don't actually have to report it. Same thing with George Lucas, right? They don't have to report any of these shares. Most of the time, you only know when they're active within the company, like selling Star Wars and Lucasfilms to Disney, or when you were the CEO and then you leave. Well, like even when Bob Iger was semi-retired and he left, there was a period of time where he sold his shares, but he didn't need to report it because he doesn't work for Disney anymore. But then when he came back, he reported his shares and they were different. So a lot of these investors that worked previously or sold their companies to Disney, they don't have to report it if they're under 5. So we might never know. Maybe he will tell us, but it's unlikely we'll find out.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised at this one. I'm surprised by both of them, actually. I'm surprised by George Lucas and this one. But with Eisner, I don't know. I mean, for him to dive into this is kind of crazy. What are your thoughts on this, George? I know you're a big Michael Eisner fan from that era. What are your feeling?
I really honestly was very surprised he came back into this knowing how very well things like this could end. Like I thought this would have gave him PTSD, it's like
poor guy, dude. Poor guy.
But I commend him on it. I mean, even more so because essentially, at one point he was Iger's boss, in a sense. And it's like, and this is a guy that basically took his place. He was removed. Iger came in. So the fact that he knows Iger and he sees something in Iger that, a lot of these people know these big corporations. We're just looking at it as simple peons, like on the outside looking in, where these people like know the trades. They know the stock market. They know the people from Wall Street. They know all these companies. They know how they can work the system. So for a person like Eisner to step in and say, you know what, I support Bob Iger, I support the company, I support the board. It's like that's very telling because he could have easily turned the other cheek. And for him to kind of come out in that manner, I very much commend him on it.
Well, you mentioned turning the other cheek, and you're right. These people have a lot of money. Like George Lucas is a billionaire, okay? He's a retired billionaire. So there's no check in the world that Bob Iger could write this man that's going to change his mind. He doesn't need the money. Now, there is a theory out there, I've heard it on Twitter, that because George Lucas's wife, Melody Hobson, I believe her name is on the JP Morgan Chase board, and the CEO of Chase, JP Morgan Chase, endorsed Bob Iger a week before, and she's on the same board of this company. Therefore, automatically that means, well, there you go. That there's the grift. I guess that's what it is. Seymour, you've seen this rumor as well. What are your thoughts on that theory about the George Lucas's wife on the JP Morgan board, and that must be why he was pressured into publicly endorsing?
I mean, I find those theories ludicrous. I mean, she has a proven track record, so she has experience with Wall Street investors. But I mean, like, and she's very successful. She has her own investment firm called Ariel Investments, and you can see a lot of the stocks that the company owns. And I was looking into them today, and one of them were Paramount, and none of them with Disney. So I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's what she's doing. It's plus there's the chairman of Embassy Universal is also on the board for J.P. Morgan. Like we can all make conspiracy theories to that, and why didn't say anything. It's all fluff. It's nothing. No, I don't agree with it. The thing that I'm noticing though with these investors, they're significant Disney investors. They're not like, oh, I like Bob Iger from previous past. No, they're big. They're also just big Disney investors that can actually make a difference when you vote, compared to the support that Pelt has been getting. They're maybe one Jim Cramer,
yeah,
and Ike Perlmutter, but he gave those shares to Tran, so that cancels it out. And that's what I'm noticing. Where is that Bob Iger's been getting the support to people who have shares and are not willing to risk those shares to go down if they get Pelts, a guy who goes on the board of the board for companies, and then 1 or 2 years leaves and then sells the shares. That's the track record he has been getting, where you don't want that as a long-term shareholder for Disney. You don't want a company to come in, make a quick buck, and leave, because that's what he did with Pepsi. That's what he did with Procter and Gamble. He's probably going to do that with Wendy's. Yeah, we don't want that. And also with Jay Rizzullo, nobody ever talks about him, unfortunately, but no love for him. Yeah. We don't need people who have. I know some people want it, but I don't think you need someone who has been involved with Disney in the past. The board of directors should be neutral. They should be independent from the actual company. If you wanted to, like for Jay Rizzullo, he should be working for Disney instead of being on the board for Disney. Two completely different things. That's why you have a variety, diverse board of directors from Morgan Stanley, from Lululemon, from Procter and Gamble as well, right? You have everything in there, but it shouldn't be where you have a past, because even in Pelts, right? He's getting the shares from Ike Perlmutter. You shouldn't be doing that. Or you shouldn't have that effect, that negativity of, because the balance is not there for it. Even the big whales, the investors, right? BlackRock, Morgan Stanley, Vanguard, all of them state that they're all with independence and going with the board that's currently happening and with the company instead of with these proxy fights. Because yeah,
no, absolutely, Seymour. Well said. And Rizzullo too. It's interesting because it's like I see a lot of people say, "Well, he's got park experience," and I've even seen this actually from Nelson Peltz. He'll make the same argument. This guy, worked in the parks. He ran the parks for a while, and therefore, that kind of justifies him kind of being on that board. Okay, fine. Peltz and his fans want to make that argument. That's fine. But then you start to kind of peel back the layers a bit with Rizzullo's record at the parks, which I think is fair game. Look, if Pelt is going to use Rizzullo's theme park experience as a selling point, then I think his track record at the parks is fair game. But for some reason, when you bring up Rizzullo's record at the parks, Well, what about this? Well, what about that? Well, that wasn't so good. That wasn't so good. Suddenly the Pelts fans are like, well, wait a minute. He's not trying to run the parks again. He just wants to see it on the board. Okay. Well, it's one way or the other, guys. Either his record matters at the parks or it doesn't. It can't be, hey, you know what? His record matters when it's a positive thing and we're trying to sell you the idea of him getting on the board. But the minute you bring up one Disney or the crap that he did with the parks, oh, well, come on, you guys. He's not trying to run the parks again. It doesn't work like that.
That's the same argument that these people have between the verses of Disney and Universal. It's like this. It's like the second something happens, like with Disney, it's like, okay, it's all like torches and pitchforks, and it's like, well, Universal could do the same thing. Well, it's like, oh, well, it really doesn't matter because Universal has high standards, but they still only come second to Disney. It's like, no matter which way you go, no matter what the runaround is, they have an excuse. So it can be put towards what their statements are meaning, which is absolutely nothing.
Universal is surpassed the Mouse House in quality, right? And look at this. Oh my God, it's amazing. Look it up in Universe, this, that, and the other. Oh, then you bring up, well, I don't know though. What about this thing though? What about that thing? Oh, well, we hold Disney to a higher standard. But why? You're telling me here that they are the best now and Disney's fallen behind. And then when I criticize Universal, suddenly it's like, oh, well, Disney's the top tier, the S tier, the standard. And I just hold Disney to a higher standard. It's one or the other. Like George says, you got to pick a lane. Either Universal's on top or they're not. And if they're on top, they get treated and criticized like they're on top. You know what I'm saying? But you're right, George. It's like there's a lot of this kind of like, well, very convenient kind of like, well, when it favors my side, we'll talk about it. When it doesn't, don't worry about it. Basically,
you shrug it off.
Yeah, you shake it off like Taylor Swift. There you go. There you go. Now Iger can send me some more of that sweet access because I mentioned Taylor Swift. Thank you.
Taylor Swift's Eras Tour now on Disney Plus.
Exactly. All right. So
you just reminded me of something regarding the board and how you're talking about how two board members. It's just two board members. The thing is, the current board member that it's being placed right now were voted by the shareholders. So, and then I'm hearing these things on X like, oh, these people on the board hasn't done anything good for Disney in the last 5 years, the last 10 years. And then I'm like, the shareholders voted them in, and the shareholders also voted their re-election. They keep voting them in. And I'm like, if they truly didn't like them, why are we voting them in? The shareholders, right? At the end of the day, the board of directors are, they're the ones who have to go for the shareholders. They're the ones activating for them. But yet, for some reason, you don't on X. It's that's not what's happening. They're saying like we hate them. I'm like, it's not true. We voted for them.
Exactly.
It blows my mind that people are saying these things when it's simply not true, right? People vote with their wallets and they're voting with their shares. And they've been voting for this, the board of directors for quite some time now, all right? And except for, I hear all this time, they're a bunch of yes men, all right? Well, are they, if you're the ones who also voted them in?
Right, exactly. Well, and Seymour, wasn't it you who brought it up? I think it was you who brought it up recently, where when Steve Jobs came into Apple, he gutted the board. Was that you? I think we did a video recently on that.
I think that was Slimer, but
oh, that was Slimer. Okay, I do apologize because we were on the same video. I wasn't sure if that was you or not. But are these boards usually? They're neutral though, right? And they're pretty neutral, but they're not like they're neutral, but they're not adversarial. Where they're not like if you brought Perlmutter on, right? Mm-hmm. He's got an axe to grind. Like you don't want that kind of energy on there. You want neutral, and you want someone who's going to vote with their, Go ahead. I do apologize.
Oh, exactly. Like you don't want someone, working from Comcast and be on the board for Disney. That would be just really weird. You want these like independent, where they don't interfere with the competition and they can think for themselves.
Yeah, no, 100%. And the other thing too, I wanted to talk about too, and this is actually one of the things I think that Peltz has gotten wrong in his campaign. I think he's run a pretty bad campaign, to be honest with you. I mean, if you look back at how Roy Disney ran his campaign with Stanley Gold, I mean, much better run than what we're seeing here with Peltz. But Peltz is focusing a lot on this Genie Plus stuff. Investors don't care about that. That's the thing. It's like when he talks about, oh, Disney's making so much money, they're over earning on this Genie Plus. Do you think an investor wants, like, they don't care? Oh, Disney's making a lot of money on this. Why are we trying to fix that? From an investor's point of view. As a fan, I understand that. And George and I have talked a lot about that with the parks, that Genie Plus is a problem. But if you're an investor and you're trying to sell, if you're in a proxy battle and you're trying to sell this to the investors, telling them that this program that Disney Parks has is making a ton of money, let's change it. And we wonder why this guy's not getting traction. You know, and that's the thing too, and we're going to talk about. But ISS, they're supporting Peltz, but they're supporting Peltz because of the succession plan or lack thereof. That's more of a winning strategy. But I don't hear as much about that from Peltz and Rizzullo as I do this Disney Park stuff. Oh, popcorn buckets are $40, and the Genie Plus, and you're trying to talk to fans, Peltz. But that's not who's the big shareholder. Those aren't the whales that are invested in this company.
And the reason why they're not going to look at that is because if you look at any other entertainment venue, any kind of theme park, take Universal. OG, you just recently went to Universal Hollywood. The price of their beer, it's like that you said, was just astronomical. So it's like you can't just pinpoint that focus on Disney saying that, oh, Disney has things overpriced. The whole freaking economy is overpriced right now. It's like that's not a reputable argument to make if you're really trying to, as you said, investors are going to look at that and go, like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, what does that have to do with anything?
Yeah, and Seymour, to your credit, you bring this up all the time. You know, like where people say, like, you know, lower the price, is that and the other. And it's like, and you kept reminding people, this is investors we're talking about. They don't want to hear that stuff. Go ahead, Seymour.
Yeah. What's happening is that it's almost like he's speaking to the fans and not the investors. And a lot of the fans are, you know, normies when it comes to the investing community. And they don't know a lot of the things that are happening. So we're getting a lot of misinformation that's going on X as well about this. But I find it baffling that he would say things like the parks are too expensive. I had a family member coming in and saying, I'm like, okay, but your family members are not the investors. And then like the rest of the things within his plans is already being done by Disney or even Ludacris. Oh, partner up with your biggest competition, Netflix. I'm like, what? Look, I'm hearing on X that Disney, Bob Iger's plan sucks. And it's like, okay, which parts is bad? The same parts that Peltz is doing. I'm like, huh? You said that was a master class. But now Bob Iger was saying this before even the proxy battle started. I'm getting very frustrated by this. Like, what? Like, right. Peltz is saying that, Hulu and Disney Plus should merge as one. That's already happening. But we should remove that branding and it should be one thing. And also talks about how they should focus on more cheaper general entertainment so they can lower the budget on the high ones that Disney usually makes with like Marvel and Star Wars. That way they can fill the gaps within the streaming service. Yeah, Bob Iger already said that. Bob Iger already said, remember that one tweet that I mentioned and then you mentioned it in the video? And I said, like, this is Peltz's plan? Yeah, but it was months ago when Bob Iger announced it at the earnings call.
Yeah, and that's the problem. And people think that, like, you know, we just want to shill for Bob Iger. We're not shilling for Bob Iger. Peltz has run a bad campaign. And if you're a Peltz fan or you're somebody that really wants change at the Walt Disney Company, who you should be mad at is Nelson Peltz for running a shit fucking campaign. That's who you should be mad about. That's how you should be mad at, because this is a poorly run campaign. He's focusing on all the wrong things, considering the audience. Now, if he wants to run for fan president, then talk about Genie Plus and Lightning Lane all day long, Nelson Peltz, and talk about the $40 popcorn buckets. If you want to run for fan president, you'll win, okay? But when you're in a proxy fight and you're talking to these massive investors, they don't care about this stuff. It doesn't matter. Now, to be fair to Peltz, he did get a win the other day. This is the thing. Like I said earlier on the video, he was really circling the drain. I made a tweet about it. I'm like, this is embarrassing at this point. Even Bob Weiss, from Imagineering was like, yeah, I'm going with Bob. You know what I'm saying? It was bad. It was bad. But to be fair, he got a big win here. Advisory firm ISS tells Disney shareholders to side with Nelson Peltz in the proxy fight. Now, this is a big firm, a very big firm. Now, Glass Lewis, which is another big firm, is with Iger. This firm is going with Pelt. So it's like 50-50 kind of, right? But here's the thing. Here, I'll read it here. Proxy advisory firm Institutional Shareholder Services on Thursday recommended the Walt Disney Company shareholders elect activist investor Nelson Peltz to the board in his fight against Bob Iger. Now, the interesting thing about this is ISS's main concern is succession. Okay, it says here that they slammed the Disney board for repeatedly failing to find a new CEO to take over for Bob Iger. Now, this is the thing. ISS, this is a winning strategy. If Peltz and Rizzullo wanted to focus more on the succession end of it, I think this is the way to go. I think even was it Alex Sherman of CNBC even said this? I think right. He's right. He's absolutely right. You know what I'm saying? It's been poorly. I mean, this campaign has been really poorly managed. Now, Seymour, I want to ask you, with the succession plan and with ISS siding with Peltz, what are your thoughts? Number one, on this endorsement, so to speak, or recommendation, and also number two, your thoughts on how Disney's been handling the succession. Does ISS have a point?
A few things. It is a big. It is big news that Nelson Peltz got this backing. It's one of the biggest groups that advocates for proxy advisory in the market. Glass Lewis is a second right under, but they're only like 28% of that market, where the rest is ISS. So, like, props to Nelson Peltz for getting this, but it almost feels like it's the glass is half full, where Glass Lewis is full. Yeah, that was a bad joke, but yeah, because they were thinking about, like, they don't want Jay Rizzullo, they really just want Peltz,
right?
And I was like, okay, that's like half of their campaign gone already. Or you could just vote for Bob Iger's and their white proxy card and get the full effect. It's almost like, when you're voting, right? And then, you can't split your votes. You either pick one or the other. And I feel like that's going to side to Bob Iger more for that. Because you're now splitting hairs with, I want this and that. I don't think that's going to be in favor for Peltz. And plus, you have Glass Lewis already. So you're get that, plus the major backings of the shareholders like George Lucas and everyone. That I think that overthrows this support that Peltz is getting from ISS.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And now, do you think they have a point with their succession criticisms of the Walt Disney Company? Or
I do, but the thing is that we don't see what's going behind the scenes,
right?
And that's a lot of the talking points that Nelson Peltz does. Even when he goes live on CNBC, he says Disney should be doing this, Disney should be doing that. They have been doing it, but we just don't hear about it. And then, like, a month later, we hear about it. It's in the background. And I think Peltz that's the whole reason for this proxy fight, is because he wants to ensure that they're going through that path, but they're already doing it. Like the beginning of the first time he had his proxy fight, he was asking for buybacks, he was asking for dividends, he was asking for board members that have more Wall Street knowledge, and Bob Iger did all of that. Yet he's still not happy. So
Yeah.
he brought in the proxy fight again the second time after Nelson Peltz was like no, and now it's to me it seems half-assed. I don't know, and like with ISS now you're only getting the half glass instead of the full glass with the glass Lewis. I it's not going to help him as much as it should have been if he was actually getting like supports from actual Disney shareholders, because he's not been getting it besides Jim Cramer.
No, he hasn't gotten anything. He's gotten Jim Cramer and ISS, I think, is it, right? If I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, that's basically, well, you have Ike Perlmutter, but
Perlmutter,
that cancel each other out because he gave the shares to fight this proxy fight.
Right. Exactly. And it's like, and that's the thing. I mean, you can make all the conspiracy theories in the world about why George Lucas did this and why this one did that. It doesn't really matter, at the end of the day, look, Peltz can throw money around too. If you think that Bob Iger is bribing people or whatever you think he's doing, I mean, Peltz has money. I mean, nobody's going in his direction though. Why?
Because again, it's Disney. It's like everything. It's almost like it became the propaganda where it's like if you hear the name Disney, it's like here come the conspiracy theories. Here come the awful decision makers. Here comes the wrongdoers. It's like nothing that you can actually say to these people that when you say the name Disney, it's like, okay, yeah, they have made some bad decisions,
quite a few, to be fair.
Quite a few. They made good decisions. They made lukewarm decisions. It's just like you can't just pinpoint everything to say, okay, well, other companies and other people are also capable of doing this too. Nelson Peltz could just be as guilty if at bribing people that Iger is, or vice versa.
Yeah,
it's like it's you can't just look at it one-sided.
And that's the thing. It's like, there are people attaching all this like nefarious stuff because they don't like the outcome. Oh, I don't like the idea of George Lucas supporting Iger, so therefore there must be this sinister thing with his wife and this, that, and the other, and Bob Iger's calling in like all these favors from all his friends and this, that, and the other. It's like, I get it. You don't like the outcome, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you support Peltz and you're disappointed, you have every right to be. I respect that. There's nothing wrong with that. But don't come up with conspiracy theories. Like I am disappointed with ISS. I wish they wouldn't have recommended Peltz. But I'm not going to sit here and make up 1,000 different conspiracy theories as to why they did this. It must be because this person is connected to that person. No. They just felt Peltz is the right decision. That's all it is. It's plain easy peasy. That's all it is. You know what I'm saying? Get too much into these conspiracy theories and stuff. You get, come on.
And I will say, speaking to ISS, is I feel like, yes, it definitely is a win, so to speak, for Nelson Peltz.
Yeah.
But I think to Seymour's point, one, I personally feel, now this is just my thoughts, my opinions, that I feel like it's already through the pipeline that so much has been done already in favor of Disney that it's kind of hard for Nelson Peltz to catch up. That despite, even though ISS is a big firm and in contributing factor to shares and what have you, I feel like just having that alone isn't enough at this point of time in the game.
Well, yeah, you bring up a great point, and I agree with you. When you have everybody else, basically, not literally before, people get on me about that, but when you have, Lucas, Steve Jobs's, widow, Glass Lewis and JP Morgan guy, and, it's just on and on and on. And then you have Jim Cramer and ISS over here.
Not to mention the Disney family. And
the 9 grandkids, which a lot of those kids probably do have some shares. It's like, yeah. I mean, and Seymour, you brought up a good point. I think it was on Twitter where it's like, you can change your vote, I believe, before April 3rd, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can change your vote. Yes.
Yeah, because voting's happening now. But has Nelson Peltz, has he made a strong enough case where people are actually going to do that? Is the ISS thing enough where people are going to go back and change their vote? I'm not convinced. I don't think enough of them will. I really don't. What do you think, Seymour, in terms of that, in terms of switching the vote maybe before the...
I don't think so, because everything I'm seeing, like, supporting Bob Iger, has just been positive, and I don't really see it. Like, even if when you look at the stock, right, the stock went up 11.5% after their earnings call. People are bullish on Bob Iger, right? I'm hearing this on X that, oh, the only reason it's going up because of the proxy fight. I'm like, no, it went up on earnings, and then it went up many times before the proxy fight as well. And right now it's doing really good. And it's his last earnings call, they did really well. Net profit up 49%, right? Net income 49%. The net profit margin, the net income, revenue up 0.16%. Cost of revenue down 4.88%, which is what you need. Like he's showing these numbers, and it's showing that it's working. Everything's in favor of him. And he's doing the buybacks, he's doing the dividends. Why would you want that gone? I just think that it's already too late. People don't like changing their votes at the end. It might be just a small minority that might change, but the issue is he's not getting the support from the actual big Disney investors. And the big Disney investors seeing the progress that's happening with Disney. You can make any excuse you want. You can make any conspiracy theory you want. But at the end of the day, there has been progress. Disney Plus was what last year lost $1 billion. Now it's just roughly $100 million, right? And it's going less and less. And you're seeing that the park's net profit margins have been going up and up. And then you hear Pelt saying it should be cheaper. No, none of this stuff you want to hear from this. And Bob Iger's been preaching out to the crowd that what they need to hear and showing it. I don't believe he's going to do that. No.
And that's why they're going to take all of that into consideration. You have to look at every piece of the puzzle, not just one straight narrow path to say, okay, ISS is on Nelson Peltz's team. Okay, Disney's doomed. It's like it keeps him in the running is basically what it's doing.
That's what it does.
We were literally thinking, okay, Peltz is going to literally kind of, forfeit, wave the white flag, tail between the legs, go run off into the corner, whatever your terminology is. Mm-hmm. But because this had happened, it keeps kind of his confidence boosted up to continue on. And that to me I think is the only thing, but taking in all the other factors along with it, everything that you just mentioned, Seymour, the shareholders are going to see that, the investors are going to see that, Wall Street's going to see that. It's like you have to combine everything into one. And you're right. It's like if the margins are going up in the sense where revenue is being created, why would you reduce the amount? Even though, yes, us as fans, us as guests, we would love that, but it's corporate, it's business. It's like they're looking at it through a one straight narrow path in a tunnel that's just a one way, and it's like it's what's going to make the money.
That's what it is. And Peltz is fighting the fandom war and trying to talk about Genie Plus to get the fan applause, but that's not who that's not your audience though. That's not who's going to vote for you. Like, you need the big investors, and the big investors see Genie Plus as a cash cow. And you're telling them that we should change it. It doesn't make any sense. Now, in terms of the stock price, Seymour's absolutely right. I'm not going to say it has nothing to do with the proxy fight, and Seymour's not saying that either. But the stock went way up. I think it went up like 4% after that earnings call, and it hasn't come down from that. Like, it maintained its gains and even built on it since that earnings call. So when people say, well, it's only up because of the proxy fight, that's not true. It was that earnings call. And I kept hearing from people on Twitter around that time of the earnings call, don't worry, in a day or two, it'll go down again. It never did. It never went down. It never went down. So, and then I hear the argument, well, Disney should be at $200 a share. Yeah, maybe it should. I don't disagree with that. But you're not going to get to 200 if you don't pass 115, 120, 130. You got to get there somehow, guys. It's called,
Yeah, that's another thing that irritates me to the core is when you take, a worldwide catastrophe of what happened back in 2020.
Is that when Donald Duck boat didn't open with Toontown? Was that the worldwide?
Absolutely, that was the worldwide.
That was it, right?
That was it. Yes, that was it. It was like, oh gosh. Open the gates.
Oh god, no, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, but but in 2020, everything changed, and a lot of people think with these big time worldwide corporations, oh, they got money in the bank, they could just get back on their feet in a click of a finger. No, it's not that simple. If anything, the bigger the corporation, the harder it is, because as each day goes by that you're not making money, you're losing not tens of thousands, you're losing tens of millions a day. And that's essentially what happened to the Walt Disney Company, along with many other big time worldwide corporations. So a lot of people have to understand it's not as simple as just flicking a light switch on and off. And it's like everything's going to magically be there with a wave of a magic wand, bibbity bobbity boo. It's like they have to literally work their way back up to the top. And we're seeing progress. And yes, we're in 2024, but however long it's going to take, you have to go through the proper steps.
You got to get there somehow, man. And it's going to be, it's one step at a time, you know what I'm saying? So crazy stuff. Go ahead, Seymour. I do apologize here.
I was going to say, because you were talking about how people are always comparing the stock price 5 years ago, how it reached 200. The thing is, if you compare everyone else, they're competitors, right? Netflix did amazing. I'm not going to, disregard that. Like Netflix, out of all the media companies, did amazing. They're the heavy hitters. So if you invested 5 years ago to Netflix, congrats. But if you invested at the top, sorry about that. But Netflix did amazing 5 years ago. But when you looked at Disney, Comcast, Warner Brothers, Paramount is down 76% in the last 5 years. Warner Brothers Discovery is down 65% in the last 5 years. Comcast is up 6.9% in the last 5 years, and Disney's up 4.36% in the last 5 years. So is Disney really doing terrible, or are we just looking at the top and saying that's bad? Because in the last 5 years, they're outpacing most of the competitors. And it's basically on par with Comcast, just a few percentage points, and there we go.
Well, and that's the thing. Yeah, exactly. They're basically on par with Comcast, and we're hearing from people that Comcast, look at how amazing Comcast is doing. So Comcast is doing amazing, but it's only a couple percentage points above Disney. How does that work?
And
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, and a lot of people say like, but the stock price doesn't represent how well a business does. It does. In long term, it represents how well a business does. Short term, it's a voting machine. So when you see it 5 years and beyond, right, you can see Bob Iger, his track record extends beyond 5 years in there. And then after, he left, what happened? Bob Chapek came in, and that's when the stock went down. Right. But yet, for some reason, they're bringing it up as if Bob Iger and current company did it. Yeah. And I'm like, no. And the board of directors have changed even then. They got people from like Morgan Stanley there. They hired Hugh Johnson to become the CFO from Pepsi, who, had a battle with Nelson Peltz. You have all these things that are different. He's only been on the Disney back for like, what, a year and 3 months? It hasn't been that long. But yet you're making it seem like he was there for the last 5 years. Right. Exactly.
Exactly. Chapek was in there for what, 3 years, I believe? 2.5, 3 years or something like that of those 5 years, So and there was a pandemic and all that and stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of context, a lot of nuance, but unfortunately, the context and the nuance, I feel like with Disney, a lot of people don't put that into consideration. With other companies, they do, which is good. You should do that. You should add context and nuance and things like that to these things because there is a lot of it. But when it comes to Bob Iger, it's like no mercy. You know what I'm saying? There's no context. It's just black and white. And it's like this stuff is so complicated. There's so much more to it than that. And
And the one thing I want to emphasize is that a lot, you mentioned a lot of people talk about how it's $200 price before. When Disney hit $200, that company was at its worst. The parks were still closed everywhere else, and they were losing money and investing so much money into Disney Plus. the business itself, the financials, was at its worst at the peak, and now the company actually has done much better, and now the valuation makes sense with the price it's at. When it was at 200, I sold my shares at Disney when it hit 200 because it didn't make sense to me. People were pumping it up, saying that the parks are going to reopen, so let's buy in. No, that's why it sank after a bit, because the financials didn't meet with the stock price. It didn't connect, and also interest rates increased and all that. But like now, though, it is getting to that point where it's like, okay, Disney is now undervalued. It makes sense to go up. It's going to reach that 200. It's been going up. Year to date has been up 27%. Over the last year, it's been up 20%. There's progress there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's progress, and there's gonna be issues along the way and bumps along the road, and there's gonna be challenges along the way, and that's fine. That's normal. But like, people want an instant fix, and like you said, Seymour, it's like he's been there a year and a half. He should have fixed it by now.
And the one thing I want to also mention is that the stock price and the financials for Walt Disney outpaced Comcast, Warner Brothers, and Paramount since he came back. They have been doing better and better. So I don't understand why I'm hearing this, that Disney's going to go broke. They're going to sell off the company. Why? They have only been improving since he came back. Why would you say that? Like, where's the proof of that? It's not. Like, they've been outpacing Netflix. No. But I'm not going to lie. Netflix did an amazing job. It is their biggest competitor when it comes to streaming. But everyone else, it doesn't hurt to be second place in streaming, especially when 25% of the revenue only counts for streaming, where Netflix is 100. So you don't need to be the best. You can be second place and still have 1/4 of the revenue.
Exactly.
But yeah, they've been doing amazing since he came back. And I understand this narrative that he's, tanking the company down when most of the stuff that happened was Bob Chapek.
Yeah. No, well said. Oh man, Seymour, I love talking to you, man. I love talking to you about this stuff, fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I know I've been talking a lot, but there's so much to unpack, and then I get lost in the thought. Yeah. Well, thank you for letting me nerd out.
Of course. No, we'll have you back on again, because this is ramping up. It's March 22nd, April 3rd, I believe, right? April 3rd is the vote. Mm-hmm. We have a lot to talk about between now and then, and after that, for sure. Go ahead, George.
Which I do want to ask, because this is like the first time. I've seen many, shareholder meetings. I've seen, many quarterly earnings, but this is like the most spicy I've ever seen it ramp up since Eisner departing the company from Roy Disney, with the campaign and everything. So on April 3rd, will it actually be announced that day of who's in, the outcome? Like, is it actually going to be announced? And if it is, will it be after the actual meeting is complete?
Yeah, they usually announce it at the beginning of the meeting.
Oh, at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember when I was back in the day with a Tesla investor. Not anymore, though, because the valuation's disconnected from the stock price. But when I was a Tesla investor, I remember they will always have their proxies, and they mentioned at the beginning of the year of the meetings.
That's going to be a banger day, bro. We'll do a video on that maybe the day after, to kind of digest everything. But that's going to be a lot of fun, talking to Seymour about all that and diving into that. It's going to be crazy. But gentlemen, always an honor and a pleasure. Seymour, thank you so much for nerding out with us, sir. If you could let everybody at home know where they could find you on social media.
Oh, yeah. You can find me on X at Mr. Seymour Duck.
There he is. Make sure you follow this man. He does amazing content. And it's not just Disney. Like, if you're into Nintendo, especially, he talks a lot about Nintendo, a lot of stock, financial stuff. Really, just a wealth of information and knowledge in regards to financing, investing, and all that good stuff. So make sure you follow Seymour. And I will be linking his stuff in the description. Go ahead, Seymour.
Yes, if you want to talk about Nintendo, please debate me with Nintendo, because I'm an investor in Nintendo and I want to research more into it. But everyone just wants to talk about Disney.
I know, right? I know. For it's funny. I keep hearing from people that Disney's culturally irrelevant, but it seems like that's all anyone ever talks about. So how irrelevant is it? I don't know. But if you love Nintendo and you are into the Nintendo, like the financial side of things or whatever, and you want to debate Seymour, reach out to him on X. Absolutely. And George, the Italiano. If you let I'm trying to think of it. What's another Italian? Would it be I don't know, like the Scarface of
the Godfather, like all that Italiano stuff.
There you go. And the beard again. It's like it's really filling in. It's what I think it's probably you got another 2 inches since last night, bro.
Yes. It just keeps on coming.
George is high tea, I'm telling you, man. High tea. Go ahead, George. Let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media.
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you'll find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
There it is. Comment down below with all your thoughts on everything we talked about. Nelson Peltz, Bob Iger, the Proxy fight, Michael Eisner now. It's crazy. Everything we discussed, whether you agree with us, whether you think we're totally wrong, whatever the case, we welcome everything, all opinions in the comments below. Just keep it civil. Thank you all so much for watching this episode of OG55.
세상은 누구에게나 공평하게 추악해.